All right, ladies and gentlemen, a quick break today, and we're going to get right back into the action here at the Dota Radio Morning Show, episode number 5. Thank you so much for joining us once again, folks. So, gents, we are going to talk Halloween now, and Halloween is but one day away. Wow, Halloween is tomorrow. Cheese and crackers. I can't believe it's this close to November already, but it seems that Halloween has inspired the artists to come out of the woodwork here, and we have a lot of pumpkin carving, and we're going to take a look at some of these here. First, we've got a Brood Mother submitted on Reddit here, pretty impressive. We've got a Shadow Fiend carved into said pumpkin, and we've got a Roshan. And I have to admit, folks, you see these like posts on Reddit, and I'm like, oh, great, here we go. Somebody trying to, get fancy with a pumpkin, and you look at them, you're like, Jesus Christ. That's an unbelievable rendition of Shadow Fiend done in a pumpkin. I mean, I suck at art, but I'm always impressed when this kind of art comes out. I don't know, it makes me jelly and wish that I could do pumpkin carving better than just like the traditional triangle, long triangle for a mouth,
I'm right there with you. I get very, very confused. I'm like, how do you what? And like I try to duplicate what people do with art, and then like I give up. I can literally have it sitting right there in front of me. I can watch your tutorials, I can look at what you're doing, and it'd be like, all right, just do this and do this, and now it looks like, a half-dead sheep.
Yeah.
And I was going for Shadow Fiends.
Yeah, and we also have over here this Doom cosplay, and there was a hot debate about whether or not this is real, whether or not, of course, this is like just sort of a photoshopped image on top of kind of a base cosplay, or if this is a true cosplay. And I think it's probably real. I think it's a mask with Pepakura and that expanding foam stuff, but that is one of the sickest cosplays I've ever seen. I'd love to see that Doom in real life, because that is the definition of badass, if you ask me. That makes me want to cosplay.
Shit.
Yeah.
It's pretty hardcore.
I was blown away by that. I hope it's real. Fingers crossed. But one of my big complaints about cosplay in the Dota community is there's never any documentation. Like, the cosplayers' pages are never linked. I'd love to contact this guy just to see if it's real, like get a statement about how it's made, but I don't know who it is. It's just a picture with no documentation.
Ask whoever posted it. Maybe they know.
Yeah, I should send him a Reddit message. But definitely cool stuff. So in other news, Diretide is coming again this year. In 2013, Diretide launched on Halloween. So it will not be out yet if they follow the same track they did last year. Either of you guys have thoughts or insight? Will there be a Diretide this year?
I mean, I know I'm in the minority, weirdly enough. I thought that most people didn't really play that thing. I really don't care, quite frankly. Like, I don't want to play some weird thing that isn't Dota that's about beating things up and stealing candy from each other. I'd rather just play Dota and not have my queue times, like, doubled because people are busy playing Diretide and trying to farm free items. I'm not in it for items.
Charlie, you strike me as a Diretide type.
What the I would rather solo queue. I would rather solo queue.
Yes!
I didn't play a single game of Diretide last game. Not a single game. I remember, like, I think my team tried to get me on that to do one of those, like, 10-man Diretide stacks to get a golden Roshan. Tides of Time spent, like, days trying to get one. He finally got one. So, like, him and, like, some of the Liquid guys, like, finally got one.
Yeah. Well...
But, my God, no. No, I hate that. No.
I don't hate it. I played it some. I mean, I don't mind free items, but, every so often I'm one of those where I'm not in the mood to try hard in a Dota game. It's nice to have something where you don't have to try hard, but I'm sort of apathetic. I sort of second the notion from Chris. Is it really that big of a deal? If they don't do it, though, I think people on Reddit are going to be upset. I see this Dota 2 Halloween mega thread. It's already got 230 comments. People are really intense about theory crafting what's going to come out, how they can get more rares to bet. I don't know. Do you guys think it will happen again? Not do you want to, but do you think Valve will do it again?
I'm not sure, just because of the fact that last year they tried to do this cool event for everybody, and what happened is people gamed the shit out of the system to get themselves nifty couriers and then sold them for like $2,000.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. I mean, Valve doesn't like having stuff in where people can game the system. They don't like having stuff in where people end up attributing absurd values to these things. Like, if you look at the golden wrenches from TF2, I'm pretty sure Valve didn't like how that ended up, and didn't like, especially because there were people who basically figured out how it was working. They figured out exactly what times you needed to craft with, or you needed to craft at, to have a chance of getting a golden wrench. And suddenly there are people who are very precisely getting these wrenches. It's not just like a fun thing for people to do.
That's true.
And people can just get so obsessed with these items and so like crazily into it because they want like the prestige of having this incredibly rare item, or they want to be able to sell it for a couple $1,000. And honestly, I mean that's something I don't think Valve likes, is the craziness that happens with some of these items.
Yeah, unfortunately, it's hard to just do something that's just for fun. There's always these people that take it super seriously, and there's money to be made everywhere and all that kind of stuff. So I think you're right, and I think you're especially right in the fact that Valve, not a big fan. I think that's definitely true. So let's talk about Korea a little bit. Of course, Dota 2 did premiere in Korea not that long ago. It was just earlier this week, actually. We talked about it on Monday's episode, and there have been some statistics released about the percentage of time spent based on gameplay in Korea. And League of Legends represents somewhere about 40% of all the gaming hours in Korea. That is absurd. StarCraft 1, pardon me, only 3.2%. Warcraft 3, 1.6%, StarCraft 2, a whopping 0.6%, and Dota, the lowest, of course, at 0.4%. So these are pretty staggering numbers here, and I wish I actually had an overlay to show these. Maybe I'll link them in chat or something. But we knew League of Legends was the game that's been taking over in Korea, right? We talked about that on Monday, and we can expect the Dota number to be low. That's not a big surprise. It's only been out for like a week. It's going to take a while for that to really kick in, but I was shocked to see the difference between League of Legends at 40% and StarCraft, even if you combine StarCraft 1 and StarCraft 2, only 3.8% or so, less than 4% of all the gaming hours in Korea are spent on StarCraft. That just blows my mind, given how big StarCraft is over there in terms of it's a career choice. There are people that drop out of school just to focus on StarCraft. I would have thought it was much more popular.
Well, I think that's part of it. StarCraft. Okay, well, if you look at it for a couple perspectives on StarCraft. First of all, StarCraft 2 is starting to die in Korea. People are deciding it's not really very good.
North America.
It's not. Well, yeah, it's. I mean, and I agree with a lot of these sentiments that it's nowhere near as tactically interesting as Brood War was.
Yeah.
And so StarCraft Brood War is getting some players back. StarCraft 2 is losing some. But at the same time, StarCraft Brood War is something you have to, A, invest a lot of time into, and B, is not something a lot of people just kind of pick up nowadays. If you play Brood War, you probably played it back when it came out.
Mm-hmm.
And then on top of that, I mean, remember these are stats from PC, which I think is their version of internet cafes.
Yeah.
So Brood War being something that's really hard to get into as compared to stats for League of Legends, which is incredibly easy to just go, drop in, play a few rounds, have some fun.
Right.
And just, enjoy yourself with some friends. And I believe also in PC Bangs, you get every champion unlocked, which is a huge incentive for people to go there to play League of Legends.
Yeah, I don't know that that's true, but if it is, I could see that, because it takes a long time to unlock champions. I mean, you can hit level 30 to be able to play ranked and still only have like 15 of the champions. There's some magic, maybe it's 18 you need, but it takes a long time, especially if you want the new ones, because they are freaking expensive. So that's huge. That's... Sorry,
yeah.
Didn't mean to derail you.
No, it's all right. It's just, and that was something that surprised me when I first read it, when someone's like, yeah, I mean, you get all the champions if you play from your PC Bang account. I'm like, oh, well, that's well, that's something that would I'd probably still prefer Dota 2, but that would incentivize me to play LoL a little bit, because half the reason I have no interest in LoL is because I don't want to spend time unlocking, a 100 hero pool that Dota just gives me.
Right.
Like, hey, look, I have every hero all the time.
Yeah, and
I don't care.
As a Dota player, that feels like just a core aspect of the game, so that's definitely true. Someone that commented on that thread under the Reddit name Esports Lottery had a quote that I really liked, and he said, TLDR, Korea is much more bandwagon when it comes to games because of emphasis on LAN and playing with friends who will all be playing League of Legends. That's why LoL is actually so big in Korea, because they definitely pile on the most popular game just to play with friends and LAN. Also, there's no existing Dota community to note of in Korea, so Dota's even further behind, and as he says, poor management by Valve on this market. Even Nexon will never catch up even if they pay $4 million into esports. So it's sort of a little bit of a jarbled post, but I like the sentiment that Korea sort of historically is more bandwagon. They like what they like, and I mean, Brood War, point in case, it's still more popular than StarCraft 2. They like what they like, and they're going to stick to it for pretty much as long as they can. So I think it's going to be a while before we see those Dota and League of Legends numbers start to level out, but I'll be really curious to see these same stats maybe 2, 3, 4 weeks from now and see how Dota catches up over time as more people have access to it. But it's just interesting to see this initial data of the MOBA scene over there. And League of Legends, man, it reigns true. Charlie, you want to chime in on this at all?
I actually spoke to Olba last night about playing Dota at the PC banks over there, since they're over there right now, and I asked him if he had gone over to any of the PC cafes over there, tried practicing or tried playing like anything over there. And he said it sucks, don't bother. I guess the Dota setup over there is really bad. They weren't really able to get any games, so they ended up like going karaoke or something.
Wow.
But yeah, Dota sucks at the PC banks over there.
Interesting stuff. So, all right, moving right ahead here, guys, let's talk a little bit of 6.79 action. We're talking the new disease, Midas Madness, that has struck many of our professional players. Hippie, you can sort of take point on this a little bit. We've been seeing Midas at an increasing frequency and mostly on heroes that wouldn't normally get it. We've been seeing supports roaming around the jungle, picking them up, and we've seen a couple of these Asian matches now in the Chinese leagues where there's like 3 or 4 Midas on a team in a couple of these situations. What are your thoughts about Midas Madness? Is it here to stay? Is it a trend? Also, Merlini posted a nice mailbag. Is that what it's called? Mailbag with Merlini.
Merlini's mailbag.
Merlini's mailbag. It's on Reddit, so if you haven't seen that, I would recommend watching it. Basically, 15 minutes of everything you need to know about Hand of Midas. But Hippie, your thoughts?
Well, I think that a lot of it, I mean, the things we're seeing a lot more Midas on, obviously, usually you had like, maybe 1/2 to an average of 3/4 of a Midas in a game. Mm-hmm. And the idea being, maybe your carry would get one and maybe he wouldn't, depending on how aggressive you wanted to play in the early game.
Right.
And now what you're seeing is supports picking it up like crazy, and they're picking it up at, 10, 15, 20. There was a Naga Siren who bought a 30-minute Midas last night for LGD International. And that's something, it's still weird to me, and I'm wrapping my head around it, but a lot of the sentiment I hear from people like Gods, people like LD, people like Merlini, and I can't totally disagree with this, is that it's because the passive gold tick gives you have this kind of level of gold coming in that you didn't have before. You don't, like, if you spend that 2,000 gold on a Midas, I think Gods put it very well. He said previously, if you got 2,000 gold, you could never be sure you were going to have 2,000 gold ever again, so you better buy a 4-staff.
Mm-hmm.
But now, since you're kind of a little more sure to get more gold, you can use the Midas to get yourself even more gold. If you get it early enough, you can get the extra experience income as well, getting you extra levels on your supports who may be spending a lot of time roaming, not a lot of time getting their extra levels. So people are kind of using it in these sort of support builds, knowing that, well, I will still get my support items, I'll just get them a little bit later. Mm-hmm. But I also agree with, I think both Merlini and LD have said this, I think it's a fad. I don't think it's going to last. I think people are going to play around with it. And then basically people are going to get punished like crazy when they keep building these Midases on lineups when, like, Rattlesnake China last night, they were playing against LGD International. They had a very, very aggressive lineup. They were doing reasonably well in the early game, and then they spent most of their early game gold building 4 hands of Midas, and they lost.
Yeah.
Because they just, as soon as you build Hand of Midas, your aggression potential, I mean, you have to think of the opportunity cost. Yeah, well, think of the opportunity cost. If you have 2,000 gold and you spend it like on your carry, he gets like half of a BKB. Your supports get 4-staff, they get mechanism, they get something like that. Mm-hmm. You can start just like, if you're already winning, those just amplify your victories like crazy. You can get so much out of items like that. Like you can start towards a pipe and things that will let you keep winning fights instead of falling back and farming.
Right.
And if you're playing an aggressive lineup and you take your, 5,000 gold advantage and turn that into a bunch of Midases, well then, if you take away the 2,000 gold everyone spent on a Midas, you don't have an advantage anymore.
Yeah.
You just tossed it all into Midas and sent your supports back to go farm instead of killing people.
Yeah. I think you're right, and I agree on a couple of fronts, and there's two core things that we need to mention that I think you skimmed over. One is that killing something with Hand of Midas gives you reliable gold, and that is one of the
Yes.
huge things about it for a support, where every time you use that Midas, that gold is safe. So you don't have to worry quite as much. And I think that's one of the big reasons why supports are doing it now with all of this extra gold they're getting from the static gold gain, the incentivized roaming, all that stuff that you covered. And I think it's going to be more of a trend because I think as more people do it, it's a pretty easy strategy to counter because there's that mid-game vulnerability where, like you said, you pick it up, you put that early investment into those Hand of Midas, and then there's this window of time where you just have nothing. Everyone on your team is just fighting for farm, and that's it. And if the other team hits that timing window really hard, what do? You're gonna throw your Hand of Midas at him, throw some gold at him. That'll slow him down, I'm sure. So I think that everyone's kind of spot on that it'll start to phase out as folks realize how easy it actually is to counter. As with most new strategies, before it's clear what the counter is, it seems really, really overpowered and broken. And then once teams start experimenting a bit more, it becomes less scary over time. Charlie, it sounded like you wanted to chime in a little bit in the middle of that.
Well, I think it's. I pretty much agree with everybody else that this is a fad, and it's just something that people are trying out. I also think it's part of I guess, a larger trend of, I guess, really greedy supports or supports that try and get more farm than you would normally see, and from players that can do a lot with that farm. I mean, you see that a lot out of the old TI3 Virtus Pro with Arzart and NS. You have EGM, who never bought wards. And then a lot of the American supports as well. Fear, who didn't really play a 4. He played like a 3.5. And then Way 2 and Fog. Like, the supports on Dignitas, like, they tried to get as many items as they could. As well as Fluff. I mean, you have a lot of these supports taking up, like, they're trying to get that one extra item to make a little bigger impact in fights now.
Yeah, it's true. It is just sort of a difference in mentality a little bit to some degree. So it's interesting. It's sort of the talk of the town right now, and we'll see how that strategy continues to unfold as the action of 6.79 continues. So this is going to be a slightly longer episode today. We've got one more talking point to hit, or one more main point to hit, and then we'll move into talking points, and that's how we'll wrap up today's episode. That next piece, though, is the analysis desk, some Mirana discussion. So, Chris, again, you're going to be able to take it away here. You're going to be talking Mirana for us this week, and I've got her changes up, so go ahead and take it away, buddy.
All right, so I chose Mirana because there was a post on Reddit. Somebody asked, so why is Mirana getting picked up so much right now? And honestly, she hasn't really been changed all that much. She got that slight buff to the attack speed that she gives when she uses Leap. Her night vision got nerfed. She's one of those heroes that used to have better than average night vision, and now is down to 800. And then her leap AoE starting at the cast location rather than the destination. I think that's a buff. I consider it so, because a lot of times I feel like you're leaping in a little bit ahead of the team and you want them to get that speed to catch up, but there are situations in which it would be better the other way around. So occasionally it really is just a change and not a buff. So why then has Mirana suddenly kind of had a rising trend in popularity? And I was pointing out in that thread that I saw that in my mind, it's because the entire game is being played a little more aggressively. We've had conversations in the past when we're looking at the tri-lane meta, and Zyori and I are talking, and we see a carry Mirana, and he'll say, I really love carry Mirana, and I'll say, well, I like Mirana, but I don't think she's a very good carry, because at that time, it was all about, because you could be guaranteed so much safe farm with the tri-lane metagame that she wasn't really a very good carry, because you get past 25-30 minutes, she'd already be getting outdone when she should be hitting kind of a mid-game stride, because that's where most of her power is. So the fact that the game is now more aggressive, so you want carries that are hitting their stride earlier in a lot of games, the fact that supports are roaming a lot more, so carries who are more able to set up kills with roamers. Mirana is incredibly good at setting up kills if even one person roams to her lane. That's, I think, another big advantage she has. She only really needs one support roaming to her lane to set up a good kill. But, the arrow is really good. Starstorm does 525 damage if you catch people with the double hit. It's really, really powerful stuff. And in the mid game, she's very powerful and can snowball very, very well. And because you're putting on more pressure, you're playing more aggressively, she's obviously going to be a more valuable pickup, even as your kind of one position carry, just because of the fact that she's so versatile and she can do things so much quicker than a hero like an anti-mage, than a hero like an alchemist, where if they get any pressure put on them, they'll still be good. They'll get their farm eventually, but they need to fall back to the jungle. They need to take some time, and they just can't go in quite as early.
Yeah. No, I think you're right. I always, back to the Han days, Valkyrie, the equivalent of Murano, was one of the first heroes that I really looked at in depth with a pro player and sort of broke down that not all heroes are an easy category of hard carry, soft carry, all this kind of stuff. She sort of, as it was always put to me, it depends on the farm that she's able to get. If she gets optimal farm, free farm style, maybe goes a Midas first, not even necessary in a lot of cases, maybe grabs a couple of kills, she can be a hard carry, but it's all relative. She doesn't really scale as well as some of the other heroes like Void or Anti-Mage or Phantom Lancer or something like that in the tip-top late game. But as you mentioned, she hits that mid-game timing at an amazing stride where she has a presence in the early game right around that level 7, level 8 mark. I mean, she can put out an absurd amount of burst damage and then still hit hard on top of that. And plus with the mobility of Leap, I love Mirana. She's one of my favorite heroes to see in competitive games, not only because of all the stuff she brings to the table, but just that arrow skill shot, man. How can you hate a hero with an awesome skill shot like that? Any hero that can set up for big plays, you got a Zayori seal of approval. But so, Chris, in terms of Mirana right now, how much is she getting picked up? Is she starting to become like a ban-worthy type hero, or is it still a very niche pick where some teams bring her in on occasion based on their roster?
I don't think she's not a niche pick anymore. She's probably not ban-worthy. I'm pulling up Dat Dota right now while I'm talking just to take a look and figure out what's going on. But
actually, I have her right here. She's been in 51 games. She's 32 and 19 right now, I think is her record.
Yeah.
Since
Yeah,
0.79.
I think you might probably start seeing her as second phase bans. I think that's not something that is going to be unheard of. We're probably going to see her maintain a pretty good win rate. I think it's going to be a lot like, as you and I both remember, of course, one of the best carries for a long, long time in Heroes of Newerth was Valkyrie.
Yep.
And that's because, guess what? S2 forced the game to play so aggressively that heroes like her were very, very valuable. Heroes who could snowball off of kills, hero who could deal with, revving up very, very early as opposed to having to wait 20 or 30 minutes to get started. And
right.
people, of course, who have, a good escape mechanism, so they're reasonably survivable, can build maybe a bit of a tanky thing going on. And so I think, yeah, you will see her maybe getting some bans. I don't think she's going to go to first ban status. She may occasionally be first phase pick status. And unless a team just has a legendarily good Mirana player. I mean, if Sing Sing keeps hitting the arrows like he was doing, when they played a game against Na'Vi, Speed Gaming, a few days ago, and just the arrows all over the place.
Yeah, I think I caught a few minutes of that
one. It was Dignitas.
I saw a game where Sing Sing played it.
Us.
Go ahead.
What was that?
Yes, he destroyed us with that. We were winning, and then every single push just got stopped because somebody got hit by an arrow, and then we lost.
I think I saw some of that game, yeah. Oh, man.
I think I said something about you got to tell Bobby to stop getting hit by those arrows, but I guess you threw him off the team because of that, didn't you?
It wasn't just Bobby. Kovac started getting hit by them, and Bleak started getting hit by them. And it's oh god.
Yeah.
It was a pretty fun game to watch, I'm not gonna lie. I was rooting for you guys because I like the guys on the team and I like you, Charlie, but it was pretty fun to watch Sing Sing just kill everyone with the Mirana arrows.
We were ahead by so much, and then somebody got hit by an arrow, and the push got stopped, and then we got full 5-man wipe, and then we lost.
And then that happened 5 more times.
Yep.
Yeah, so hopefully we'll continue to see Mirana action. I'm sure that we will with a 60% win rate. No doubt that she'll continue to get picked up, as the meta continues to shift here following the changes of 6.79. I'm just baffled at the timing. I love that it came out right as we launched this show. Every single episode, there's something interesting about 6.79 that we get to cover. So it's good. Meta shifting at a great time. But let's go ahead and wrap things up here today, guys, with our talking points. And originally we were hoping that Pyrian Flax would be here to talk about this with us a little bit, but of course his time is valuable and also limited, so we did have to let him go following our interview. But our talking points today are actually inspired by Pyrian Flax himself, and it is about racism in public Dota 2 matches, inspired by the blog Pyrian Flax Attacks Foreigners. If you haven't seen that yet, you should check it out. And here, I'll pull it up on the overlays once again. And this is the blog. Here it is. It is posted on Team Liquid. It was posted on the 19th, so it's a little bit older now. It's a quick read. It's pretty short. He goes straight to the point, and it's in true Pyrian Flax style, mind you. There are insults aplenty woven throughout this fabulous tale. So let's go ahead and get right into it here. So this blog is all about addressing the mechanism of racism in international Dota pubs, right? We see on every server there are people that cross queue. Russians, Brazilians, Europeans, Americans. Everybody plays on wherever their friends are, wherever queue times are best, and ping is okay. So we see in many a public game, regardless of where you are in the world, individuals playing on your server that don't necessarily speak the designated language. There's tons of memes out there, about Russian players queuing up on American servers, and everyone kind of scratching their head, why you got your own servers, dude, and how this can sort of lead to toxicity inside of Dota 2 pubs. So Pyrian Flax breaks it down into three primary sections, I guess, if you will. First of which is looking at the language barrier. And one of the points that he makes is that Americans can't be hypercritical of foreigners that don't speak English, because on average, how many languages do us Americans speak? The vast majority of us only speak one. Second languages are kind of a joke in our country. We all speak enough Spanish to say, La manzana es una fruta, because that is so useful in modern day, period, So one of the other points that he brings up that's really interesting that I hadn't quite thought of is, Brazilians speak Portuguese, and I had thought of that. But what's interesting about Brazilians is that their country is so great that they never leave it. He said, have you ever seen Brazilians on vacation? No, neither have I, because they get to vacation within their own country. And that was sort of an interesting, just for me, aha moment of culture in Brazil about, they tend to not be very eager to try and speak English. They just ignore you. And, if they queue with a couple of their buddies, they speak in their language, you speak in yours, and they totally ignore you except for, GG or noob or push or whatever little phrase that they have. And I sort of thought, you're right. They are pretty locked within their country. They have a very vibrant culture. They don't need to leave. Hence, they don't really need to speak English. And one of the points that Pyrian Flax makes is that's not what adds the toxicity. The people that are douchebags and speak another language or don't speak your language would probably be douchebags anyway, even if they were speaking your language. The language barrier just sort of amplifies it a little bit because they don't understand your insults. So he goes into his second point to talk about, shouldn't people just queue on their native servers? Wouldn't the whole problem be solved if folks would just stay home and stay on their language base? And I think you could make an argument for yes to that. That would solve a lot of toxicity problems where people can't communicate. After all, Dota is a single, is a team game, and single queue is a bit of a gamble, as Pyrian Flax put it, sort of like digging for those old cigarette butts to roll a new cigarette. When you're desperate, just need that fix of Dota, you'll queue up solo queue. But why would you want to punish yourself just to roll the dice with 4 other randoms out there? But he sort of goes to say that no, that doesn't exactly solve the problem, because there's things like Smart Ping now where you can communicate without actually understanding languages. People know what those commands mean. And ultimately, the internet is kind of about breaking down barriers, right? The world is flat. You ever read that book? We're all on the same plane because there's so much connectivity between the countries. There's no way to get around dealing with other cultures and other languages when you're on the internet in general, and especially playing an international game such as Dota 2. Now, his third big point that he goes into is based off this quote, "But Pyrian, I've played hundreds of games with people that are without a doubt the worst, and they've all been from country Russia. They've all been from Brazil, what have you." And he breaks it down to basically you just suck at math. You have to look at how many of these people are actually queuing up. And if there's a large pool of Brazilians queuing on your servers, a certain percentage of them are going to be bad. A certain percentage of the people that speak your language are going to be bad. So just by queuing, you're going to get bad people. And the sort of macroscopic takeaway, I think, is being an asshole and speaking a different language are mutually exclusive. They're not one and the same. You can be a jerk and speak my language. You can be a jerk and not speak my language. You're still going to be a jerk. But it kind of sticks with us a little bit more. You ever walk through your house and you drop your coffee cup and it breaks and you think, God damn it, that's the second time I did that this year. I drop my coffee cups a lot. you think about the negatives because it's extreme. You don't think about the hundreds of times you've walked downstairs and not dropped your coffee cup. The same sort of effect plays true in games like Dota, where when you get mad and the other person doesn't speak English, it amplifies your rage because you can't yell at them. You don't get anything out of being able to argue with them. You just have to put up with them spamming you or ignoring you or what is it. So it sort of seems worse, but you get people that are bad that speak your language all the time. It just doesn't stick with you if they're nice or if they say, oh, sorry, man, I tried, but I'm just not very good with Shadow Fiend. It's hard to be mad at those people, but they're still bad. So being foreign or having another language barrier there is not what causes the toxicity. The toxicity is innate in the people, regardless of what language they're speaking. And he sort of goes on to, this is paraphrasing, but what I took away, implying that that those two things are mutually exclusive, i.e. Russians are bad because they don't speak my language, or vice versa. That's what's racist. As he pointed out earlier, he did comment on the blog a little bit, and it's not necessarily bad that people say it, because people are going to be racist and offensive everywhere, especially with the anonymity veil of the internet. But it's scary when it sort of becomes okay. When semi-prominent figures are able to say this on stream or sort of say it publicly and everyone's just like, oh yeah, it's kind of true, Russians do really suck. That's when you cross the line of, okay, this is taboo and people still do it, to people do it and this is not really taboo anymore. And that was the big takeaway he wanted to make. So those are our talking points for today, folks. As he put it here as a final thought, we lost because of Russians? No. You lost because you collectively stank up the place as a team. I love that quote. Charlie or Chris, either of you guys have something you want to add, an addendum to that little rant about racism in Dota?
I think I kind of agree there's points on both sides, because I've found myself thinking several times, well, we have not just server filters, but language filters. If you don't understand the language I'm using to communicate, why did you check the box that says you do? Mm-hmm. Which, to me is frustrating. And I think it's something that gets more frustrating if you're trying to play a very serious game of Dota. When I go in, and I go in like with my serious buddies and I just want to win, I'm in there to play really hardcore Dota, then I get really frustrated if we end up with somebody who basically can't work with the team because we can't communicate properly. There's more than just saying, oh, let's push this lane, let's get this tower, let's gank this hero. There's things like, okay, focus this guy, use these spells in this order, and do this, and do this. And there's a lot of intricacies that, of course, are... Dota is an incredibly difficult to execute game at high levels, and having someone who doesn't really understand is difficult. But at the same time, if you're just playing Dota for fun, who cares? If I'm going in and just queuing with my random friends, who, I don't always... I queue with people who I don't expect to win with, quite frankly. I think that's something that a lot of us do.
Oh, yeah.
And then, so, we end up with, who cares if we end up with someone who doesn't quite speak English? If they kind of get where the game is going, if they kind of know, where the team is moving, I'm not expecting everyone to be perfect in a game like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I would agree with that for the most part. I get frustrated too when you're trying to sort of do something serious and you get through people that just don't speak your language. For me, it's all about effort. I don't mind when people are bad if they're nice about it. They start off the game with, hey guys, I don't play Shadow Fiend that often. What items would you suggest? If someone says that, I'm like, all right, this is a good guy. I don't really care if he loses mid or if he sucks. As long as he doesn't start flaming me, I'm okay with the fact that he recognizes he's not good and wants help. And same goes for folks with other languages. If they're trying and doing okay, I don't really mind that I can't communicate with them as much as I'd like. It gets frustrating when that becomes a barrier to our play, where I'm thinking, if he could have understood what I'm saying, then maybe we would have won that fight and we would have won the game. That's where it gets frustrating. But such is the internet. To me, it's sort of a weird thing to be mad about. I try not to get mad when I play video games anymore. I try to think of that as a relic of the past, and I've matured past getting really mad at strangers on the internet because my pixels didn't do better than the other team's pixels. But I still get frustrated sometimes. Charlie, anything you want to add about racism here in the pub scene?
I think the language issue is a pretty complicated one. From what I understand about Brazilians and a lot of the South Americans, is that because of the way that servers are routed, they actually get better ping to US East than the South American servers. And as far as language selection, from what I know about that, I think it's those are you're not locked into those languages. Like when you select I only want to queue for English or queue for this, this, and this, and this.
Right.
I think it's one of those things where I would prefer Portuguese or whatever, but if the queue takes too long, I'm fine with being matched up against somebody or with somebody that speaks English.
Yeah. Yeah. I see what you
So
mean.
I mean, I don't think there's. I mean, it's hard to have a perfect solution for this. There are also lots of issues where
Right.
where people when they queue, do they queue to have fun or do they queue to I seriously
Yeah.
want to win? I think that's a problem with that goes into an underlying problem with matchmaking where I think there might need to be like a separate ladder
Yeah.
for a different kind of mentality.
That's a really good point, where whenever you have a pool where some people are going to try as hard as they can to win and a pool of people that are just playing to have fun or experiment, there's always going to be that conflict. You're absolutely right about that. So who knows? Maybe another mode. That's another mode helps segregate that, but doesn't totally solve the problem. But an interesting topic nonetheless, and certainly very difficult. Again, if you want to check out that blog, it is posted on Team Liquid here. I saw someone posted a link in chat, but I will go ahead and post another one here for you guys to check out Purian Flax's blog. Again, we thank Purian Flax for coming on today. He's a great guest, though. He's an interesting character. I could have sat here and talked to him for a few more hours, but we're glad he was able to give us a good 30 minutes of his time for a bit of interview. And a big shout out to everyone that posted questions. We fielded a couple of them, but sorry folks, we didn't get to as many as I would have liked. That does wrap up episode 5 of the Dota Radio Morning Show, guys. Remember that you can tune in always at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. That's right, 3 days a week we'll have an interview guest and also cover current events and news. A lot of our stuff does come from Reddit, so if you're one of those guys that refreshes Reddit 10 times every hour, some of the stuff will be reiterated. We do take from other sources, but Reddit is one of our primary go-to spots for trying to find interesting things to talk about. Remember, guys, you can always visit the portal to go to the visit the portal to find out more about the Dota Radio Morning Show, dotaradio.com/morning show. All of the episodes are archived there with a nice little drop down, and that's where you can find a link to the iTunes, YouTube, RSS feed, when the next episode is going to be live, all that good stuff, and the Twitters of our hosts, so you can see all of our last episodes there. This episode will be archived straight away. The first portion is uploaded to YouTube already, and I think it's actually done processing, so you can check that out if you did come in late or missed the Purian Flax interview. Remember, you can also email into the show as well, morningshow@dotaradio.com, morningshow@dotaradio.com. Any thoughts, comments, questions, concerns, feedback, please let us know. Drop us a line if you have any questions. We'd be more than happy to answer it on air. If you're curious about our hosts, remember Hippie is our analyst, our analysis guy, so if you have a specific topic you want him to talk about, a specific question, feel free to tweet at him, at HippieCasting. And of course, Monolith, our manager of Team Dignitas, the guy that's in charge of getting all of our guests on. If there's someone in particular you'd like to see interviewed or on the show, drop him a line as well, at Monolith Dota, and that's where it's going to be at. Until next time, though, guys, I'm all tongue-tied here at the end of this episode for some reason. Until next time, though, guys, be kind to yourselves, be kind to each other. We'll see you on Friday for episode 6 of the Dota Radio Morning Show.